In this video, I'll share the story of Orixá mythology and explain how it differs from Candomblé and Umbanda. For example, did you know that Iemanjá is not an Orixá of the seas? All this and much more you'll see here in this video. If you're new here to the channel, don't forget to subscribe because there's a new video about mythology, demons, and angels every week. Don't forget to leave your comment something, and share the video because it helps me a lot, okay? Thank you very much in advance. Before we begin, note that this video will focus on Yoruba mythology, not African-based religions in Brazil. I'll have to discuss them eventually since Yoruba mythology influenced them a lot, but I won't go deep into this subject. Another thing I know some people will comment is that this isn't mythology, it's religion, but one doesn't cancel out the other. Mythology is the collection and study of fantastic stories, which aren't always lies. For example, King Arthur's mythology exists, but no one knows if he was real. To put it simply, mythology is not the same as mythomania. It's not a lie. Well, there's no way to start this video without talking about the people to whom these stories belong, which is the Yoruba people, one of the 3 largest ethnic groups in Nigeria. They were concentrated in the southwestern region of the country, but there's also another smaller group that lived in Togo and Benin. They speak a language from the Benue-Congo branch, which is part of the Niger-Congo language family. Most Yoruba men work in agriculture, growing yam, corn, millet, peas, beans, plantain, and other things. Others also work with the Yoruba name. It ended up reaching us in 1826 because of Captain Kleptor, who brought a manuscript from an Arab region where he came from, which was called Osa in West Africa. In the beginning, Yoruba was used to refer to the people who lived near the Oyo River in Yoruba, right? However, several cities ended up developing and they were also considered Yoruba, even though these people did not see themselves as a group, because each of them had their own language, their own culture. Of course, the language was understandable among them, and the cultures were very similar, both politically and religiously speaking. Each group had its own kingdom and ethnicity. They were ruled by a king whom they called Oba, and this Oba was also considered a priest there in the kingdom. He needed to have near his palace the temples of the main deities of the city. These deities were called Orixás. Examples of kingdoms include Oba, Oyo, Ejiba, Ejibabo, Ejebu, Ejexa, Ekiti, Ondo, Okoko, and Owo. And of course, these kingdoms ended up coming into conflict with each other mainly because of land, and depending on the city, the main deities would end up changing. In Abeokuta, the main ones included Oduduwa, Obatala, Obalufa, Shango, Ogum, Eshu, and Ifa. Regardless of the city, society was based on religion. There, basically everything, resources, land, and even the people were considered to belong to the Orishas, and even every statement made by the ruler was considered something close to divine. Interestingly, these deities' sanctuaries were usually very close to the palace, or on the outskirts. For example, on the banks of the Ogum River, there was a sanctuary of a deity with the same name. On Abeokuta's outskirts stood Lumura, a sanctuary for the Ejibas, considered lesser deities. The rules that applied to society were also based on myths. This religiosity was so strong that it almost gave rise to theocratic cultures, not only for the Yoruba, but also for the Fon people. In fact, the creator deity of the Fon ended up becoming Morixá, but I'll talk about that later. According to this religion, there was kind of a communication between 2 worlds, which are the Aye world, which would be the earth, and Orun, which would be the divine sky. The communication between these 2 worlds happened through a force that was called Axe. In the rituals, the life cycle was linked to Axexe, the funeral ritual. Where the passage known as Are happens, a human moving to the afterlife, or Orun, there are also Iboas, or offerings. These offerings restore Axe and help improve destiny. In the case of mythological stories, they are very important for keeping the culture and symbols alive. Yoruba, they're called itans, which would be oral tales. It's very important for me to talk about this because I don't know if you noticed, but at no point here did I mention any sacred book of the religion in Yoruba. In other words, there is no written document with these stories, which leads to several different versions about them. Each city and person may tell the story differently, like the story of Zango. One city may tell it one way, while another city has a different version. So just be aware that when we get to the part about the Orixás, you might see a different version from what you've already heard about the corresponding Orixá. Anyone who follows an African-based religion here in Brazil has probably recognized basically all the terms I've mentioned here. And just like I've said several times, I'm not deeply knowledgeable about these religions. But by researching Yoruba mythology and talking to some people, you can notice differences between the mythology and the religions here, beginning with religious beings. For example, the Exus. There's Exu Caveira, Exu Trancarua, Exu Giramundo, and even Exu Caveira. I think his appearance is really cool, but in mythology in Yoruba, there is Exu, an Exu who is the messenger of the Orixás, the one who receives the offerings and takes them to Oxóssi. There are also beings like the Pretos Velos, Caboclos, Eres, child spirits, and others I can't recall now. If you mention these beings in Africa, people won't recognize them. And another difference is Yemanja, because here in Brazil, you probably recognize that ritual of jumping over the 7 waves of Yemanja on New Year's Eve. And here she is, called the Orixá of the Seas. However, in Yoruba mythology, there is Olokun, and he is the Orixá of the Seas. Yemanja would actually be another river Orixá, also in Brazil. From what I understand, I may be wrong, so feel free to correct me in the comments. The Orixás would be seen as forces of nature that act as intermediaries between God, who is Lorun, and humanity. They aren't exactly gods, though they are divinities, since in this case divinities means those from the divine. Reading Samaritans, it's clear that in Yoruba mythology, at least some Orixás, like Zango, Oxóssi, and Ogum, are considered gods. They are often called gods of thunder, the hunt, the forge, or war. One interesting thing is that once I was talking to someone from Candomblé, and they ended up telling me, in this case, I'm not sure if this applies just to her branch or all of Candomblé. I found it interesting that Lauren, who would be God, is the same God as in Christianity. You probably already know how the Orixás came to Brazil, right? What? It's a sad story. Slavery brought people from Nigeria who were then prevented from practicing their faith. So how did they do that? Through syncretism, which is when you end up combining 2 religions and keeping some elements from the original beliefs. So several saints and characters from Christianity ended up being connected with the Orishas. For example, Exu was linked to Saint Anthony, Oxóssi to Jesus, or the Lord of the Neighborhood, Ogum to Saint George, Oxóssi to Saint Sebastian or Saint Anthony, and Zango to Saint Peter or Saint Jerome, Amalu with Saint Lazarus or Saint Roch, and Imanja with Our Lady of Candeias or Our Lady of the Conception, which is why when you search for Yemanja on Google, she kind of appears as white, right? Which is kind of weird. And just by me saying that the Orixás have connections with the saints and that they can be representatives of God, you can already understand that they are not demons, right? In the beginning, the world was swampy and full of water, a place impossible to live in. Well, above this strange place was Orun, which was the sky where Olorun and all the other Orixás eat. Sometimes they even came down to this place to play there, always using the spider webs that hung in the void. There was still no solid ground or people living there, but once Olorin called Orixan, the great Orixá, and told him to go down there and create solid ground. To carry out this task, he gave him a seashell full of earth, a dove, and a chicken. Orixá, with a 5-toed foot, went to the swamp and set earth from the shell. He placed a dove and a chicken on it, and they began scratching around. However, they spread the earth little by little, until solid ground was formed everywhere. Orixá went back up to Orin and told Olorun that he did everything just right. The Supreme Lord then decided to test if the work was well done, so he sent a chameleon to the earth. The chameleon came down but couldn't walk well since the earth wasn't firm yet. He returned and reported the experience, noting the earth was large but still not dry. On the second descent, he walked normally. He saw that the land was good, so he came back saying it was good enough for everyone to live there. This place was later called Ife, which means wide dwelling. Then, Olorin sent Orisha back to the earth to plant trees and provide food and riches for the people. Rain watered the trees. That's how it began. In Ife, during the 4-day week, Orisha created the world and all within it. This is one version of the world's creation, but there are many others. One version says Obatala, after receiving the creation items, passed through a region guarded by Eshu. Eshu always received offerings to allow someone to pass through. Since Obatala didn't give him anything, Eshu knocked him out with a blow and Dudu took all the items. That's what created the world. Obatala missed a great opportunity. He was given the chance to create humanity. Obatala then created man and woman. Using clay from Nana, the old Orixás, he shaped it with the breath of Uludumare, another name for God. He gave life in the world, completing it. Ogum is a powerful Orixá, ruling the forge, fire, hunting, politics, and war. He has traits strongly reminiscent of Ares from Greek mythology. That's because he is very impulsive and also very strong, as some stories tell about how he became that way. Orisha says that at a certain moment when he was very angry, he took his sword and stuck it into the ground. He started opening a huge hole and jumped inside, and after that he went to Orin, becoming an Orisha. Ogum, son of Yemanja and Ogum Dudua, is Shango's brother and rival, constantly competing with him. He is also the brother of Eshu and Oxóssi and has relationships with some Orishas like Oshun and Oya. One of the stories involving him says that once, the Orishas needed to clear some trees from a piece of land to have more space. The first one who tried to do this was Osain. However, his machete was made of a soft metal and didn't last long, ending up breaking. Several others tried, but no one could cut down all the trees. Ogum, who had received the secret of iron, took his machete and cut the trees easily. Everyone asked him what material he was using, and he said it was iron, and that he received it from his father. Everyone envied him because this metal helped both in farming and hunting, and also in war. They kept bothering him to get the secret, but he didn't want to tell anyone. The other Orixás then gathered and decided to offer everything to Ogum, even the crown, as long as he taught them everything about Ogum. He accepted, but even as king, he was still a hunter and decided to go into the woods for a while without telling anyone. When he came back, he was all dirty, and the other Orixás got angry and kicked him out of there. In Erie, he built a house and shared all his iron knowledge with men, who still worship him today. Eshu is one of the coolest Orixás in Yoruba mythology because he's kind of a trickster. He's a messenger of the Orixás, but not quite like Hermes from mythology. Eshu takes care of the crossroads and can deliver offerings to the other Orixás. That's why he should always be served first. Eshu is extremely fast and very powerful. According to one story, his appetite was so insatiable, he nearly devoured the entire world. First, he ate all the food in the house he was in, then all the food in the city, and then the animals. He drank all the water, ate all the spices, and even after death, he didn't stop. They promised he'd always receive. Eshu is also very intelligent. Once, he was accompanying Oxóssi during the creation of humans, and just by watching, he learned the art of creation. He was invited to stay at Oxóssi's house because he didn't have a home, river, farm, or anything. That's right, he saw that many people visited Oxóssi's house, but only saw him and left. Eshu stayed there 16 years until Oxóssi asked him for something. He asked him to wait at a nearby crossroads, where people passed on their way to his house. He shouldn't let anyone without an offering pass, and since he had a lot to do and didn't have time to receive the offerings, Eshu would have to collect them and take them to Oxóssi. So Eshu started receiving all the offerings, and recognizing all of Eshu's effort, Oxóssi gave him a reward. Everyone should also always bring an offering to Eshu at the crossroads now. They're Eshu. He held an ogo, a powerful club, with which he drove away anyone who was disrespectful. And there he watches and waits for whoever will pass by. Oxóssi is the Orixás of the forest and the hunt, caring for all wild animals and sharing many of their traits. He is strong like a lion, fast like a leopard, light like a bird, silent like a tiger, observant like an owl, hides like an armadillo, is vain like a peacock, and climbs like a monkey. Oxóssi deeply understands all animals and everything about them. And whoever paid attention knows that I said that Ogum was also a hunter. And there's a story that says he was the one who taught Oxóssi the art of hunting. In this story, Oxóssi would be a brother of Ogum, and Ogum loved him very much. In this story, Ogum had just returned from a war and found Oxóssi trembling with fear. He discovered that enemies had invaded his village. Ogum then gathered all the strength he didn't have and started fighting them throughout the whole night. At dawn, when everything was over, he sat next to Oxóssi and said that he could rest easy because whenever he needed, he would be there to help. However, he should learn to hunt and defend himself. Ogum taught Oxóssi everything, so Oxóssi could now go to war confidently and protect the whole village. Molu, Shapana, Balwai, or Sapata is the Orisha of illness, healing, and rules over spirits. Stories say Balwai was very disobedient as a boy, and one day he was there playing in a garden that had many white flowers. His mother clearly warned him not to step on those flowers under any circumstances. Balwai acted like he didn't hear and even stepped on the flowers on purpose. His mother saw it and didn't say anything, but when the boy realized it, his body was covered in white flowers. And over time, those marks turned into horrible blisters. Balwai, of course, was terrified and desperate. He yelled for his mother to remove the blisters. His mother refused, saying the boy's disrespect caused it, and it was a punishment, but she would help. She threw popcorn on him, and the blisters vanished as if by magic. Balwai left the garden as smoothly as he had entered. In another story, it is said that Balwai went from village to village looking for work, but no one gave him any. So he went to live in the woods where insect bites caused wounds on him. He stayed there for a while until a mysterious voice told him it was time to go back home because his people needed help. So when he woke up, his wounds were healed. He gathered his things and went home. When he arrived at his village, everyone was sick. Using the knowledge of herbs he had learned in the woods, he healed everyone, including his parents. And everyone shouted his name as Lord of the Land. Balwai Oshun is the main guardian of rivers, especially the river named Ogum. She is also connected to wealth, beauty, fertility, and prosperity. She is highly worshipped there and is also among the most beautiful Orixás. That is, if she isn't already the most beautiful, since she can seduce anyone she wants, man, woman, or even an Orixá. She did that with Ogum when he left his role as Orixás' blacksmith to return to hunting. Ogum defeated all challengers but couldn't resist Ogum. She danced in front of him and managed to take him back to the city, even while he was hypnotized. Being represented as a beautiful black woman, Ogum wears jewelry and yellow clothes and also holds a mirror. She is typically portrayed as Yemanja and Orumila's daughter. Born when Orumila, enchanted by Yemanja's beauty, invited her to his palace with Eshu's help. She returned pregnant and gave birth to a beautiful girl named Ogum. In another story of seduction, she also ends up seducing Oya, but then she leaves. She disguises herself as a river, creating the Ogum River. For the Yoruba, a manja was the Orisha of rivers and boxes. There are some stories that involve the sea as well, but that's mostly related to her father or her mother, who is Locum. But she is still very powerful. But once, Zango ended up angering Yemanja. She started pulling all kinds of water into her body until she became extremely huge and scared Zango. In some stories, she helps create the world. When Olodumare began shaping it, he made Yemanja's kingdom. She started helping him shape the rest of the surface and create the landscape of the world. She assigned each Orixá a role, like giving Ganju the volcanoes. In another story, Yemanja was alone in Yorin Ali where she lived and took care of herself. But one time Ludumare decided to give Yemanja a family. Then her belly grew larger and stars were born from her. But these stars went to the sky and abandoned Yemanja, and her belly started to grow again, and from her came the clouds. And the clouds also abandoned Yemanja. But once again her belly grew, and this time Zango, Oya, Osain, Obalwai, and the Abejis were born. They didn't abandon Yemanja. Zango is the Orixá of thunder. He is usually the pantheon's leader and often competes for that role. Along with Ogum, Zango also has 3 wives, Oxum, Oya, and Oba. Then you say to me, but Emmy, didn't you tell me that Ogum also has relationships with Oxum and Oya? That's right, he does. They even competed for women. Zango appears holding double axes, since the axe is the symbol of thunder, and he has 6 eyes and sometimes even 3 heads. His colors are red and white. He is related to Oxumare, the Orixá of the rainbow, since he used to carry water to Zango's palace. Zango is very strong. He awakened his powers during a losing war, but then he climbed up a rocky hill, and after hitting the rocks out of so much anger he was feeling, he unleashed fire, burning several enemy soldiers, and summoned lightning to strike the other generals. Despite his great power, Zango still has fears. One of them is the Iguns, who are evil spirits or ghosts that once relentlessly pursued Zango, and he only barely escaped. With Oya's help and her mirror, Zango showed the Iguns their reflections, causing them to flee. And there are several other Orixás. I'll go through them quickly here so I don't take up too much time in the video. I won't mention all, but I'll cover as many as possible. The one I've mentioned before, the Orixá of natural phenomena. She could blow a wind so strong it nearly knocked the world off its feet. Zala, or Obatala, who is one of the most important, is the one who created the world and human beings. Nanambaruke, the oldest Orixá from Fawn mythology, created the world. For the Yoruba, she provided humanity's clay of creation. Jumare, the Orixá of the rainbow, is sometimes male and sometimes female. Oba is a war Orixá who nearly defeated Ogun, but was ultimately tricked and lost. Osane is the Orixá of medicinal herbs. The Yami Oxoronga are the witches and bird women who can change a person's life in an instant. If you want to learn more about these Orixás, I have a playlist on Yoruba and African mythology on the channel, covering the daughter of Zango, Yemanja, Oxagia, Yami Oxoronga, and more. The playlist will be in the card, description, and end screen for you. If you watch the video up to this point, hey, leave a like because this video was a lot of work, huh? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos, to share the video, and to leave a comment. That's it. Thanks. See you. Bye.